Welcome to the MMA DFS Strategy Show right here on Awesemo.com as we get you ready for Saturday's UFC Vegas number 19. That is the fighter, Pete Rogers Jr. And do us also a favor, hit that like button because it's Pete's birthday. Happy birthday, Pete.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks for joining us, guys. What's up?
Of course, or if you're listening after the fact, give us a 5-star review on your favorite podcasting platform. That does help us out a lot. So as always, we do appreciate the support that we get over here at Awesemo.com. Pete, we have got a 15-fight card. Let's hop right into it. Main event is a fight that we talked about back in December. Curtis Blaydes and Derek Lewis. Of course, we all know Curtis Blaydes, a massive betting favorite in this one, minus 420 on the betting odds. When you look at Derek Lewis, plus 345. Pete, break it down for us, man.
Yeah, so, I mean, you have an incredible wrestler in Curtis Blaydes taking on Derek Lewis, who, you know, ultimately underperforms in a lot of his fights and then somehow, you know, finds a way to win when he's losing. If you think about the Volkov fight and, you know, his volume is, you know, minimal at times. He's always waiting and then just in, you know, perfect Derek Lewis fashion, you know, comes from behind and secures some victories. You know, even think about the previous fight against Oleinik, where, you know, he was taken down and then had to overcome being put in that neck crank. And, you know, long story short, you have an amazing wrestler facing Derek Lewis who has okay takedown defense, if that. You know, but once he does hit the mat, he seems like a fish out of water. And I will say that, you know, Curtis Blaydes has excellent control. He virtually controlled Volkov for 19 minutes of that title of that main event. So that's pretty crazy. And I do think that, you know, Volkov has better stand-up ability, being able to get back to his feet, better takedown defense, made Curtis Blaydes work. I understand that Derek Lewis has the physicality factor about him, the power about him. He's always one punch away from, you know, turning the tides and coming back from, you know, some bad sticky situations. But for me, I do think that Curtis Blaydes is the side to play. GPP target Lewis can definitely get you a knockout, but it's equivalent to a puncher's chance. And I will say that Curtis Blaydes is the smart side of this fight when you take into account control time, takedowns, and ground and pound. And I actually think that he could get him out of there, you know, inside the distance.
Yeah, actually, when I think about one of what I believe is one of the best bets in terms of the betting odds for this fight is Curtis Blaydes via TKO KO minus 145. I was actually surprised to see that the submission prop was not even higher than what it was. It was like, I think it's like plus 945 because, Pete, you know this, when Curtis Blaydes goes to the ground, I don't think I've ever seen him go for any type of submission attempt.
Yeah, exactly. He hasn't secured one. So, you know, maybe Saturday's the day that he does it, because I will say that a guy like, you know, Derek Lewis is going to have to really increase his work rate. And I think that, you know, the work rate could end up breaking Derek Lewis. I mean, you also talk about how, you know, going into each camp, you never know if Derek Lewis is going to be healthy. He's got a back problem, his toe, his big toe. You never know. You know what I mean? So it's always something with him. I love Derek Lewis. Like, I absolutely love Derek Lewis, but I do not think that this is a good matchup for him. I don't think that Curtis Blaydes will be suckered into a brawl. I think that he's going to be very methodical, go out there and grind down Derek Lewis and finish him one way or another. So inside the distance, I like quite a bit.
And you look at the salaries here, $9,400 for Blaydes, $6,800 for Lewis, and we're on FanDuel, $23 for Curtis Blaydes, $17 for Derek Lewis. I mean, obviously, Derek Lewis, you mentioned about it. It's, you know, break this one down is really easy. It's called keep the fight on the feet. And, you know, one of the things that Curtis Blaydes, he's going to have to is that quick burst up that we do see from Derek Lewis, where sometimes it just feels like he's not doing anything on the ground, and then all of a sudden he has this magic burst up. But I think that this fight is to me, it's all about Curtis Blaydes. He's made, you know, no bones about it. You know what he's going to do in this one. And then if you didn't see on the UFC Twitter account yesterday, Derek Lewis having a little fun with a guy for the UFC production team interviewing him, going, "Yeah, I'm an All-American. I'm going to take him down."
Yeah, I mean, Derek Lewis did show, you know, some, you know, advancements in his game, you know, and he was in some tough positions against Oleinik. But I just think the pace, the pressure of Curtis Blaydes, I mean, you could do worse than Derek Lewis. I mean, in the UFC, he's 15-5, and he always finds a way to win. So I do feel like I will be rostering the main event in most of my lineups just because of, the potential that Curtis Blaydes has on this card. And also the KO, shot that Derek Lewis has going in, but I'm definitely leaning Blaydes pretty heavily.
80% exposure on the fight?
One more of the fight. Yeah, about that. I mean, there's 15 fights, so maybe not that high, Jason, but I do feel comfortable that Blaydes will get a win. If you look at some other fights, like it's a toss up between a lot of other fighters. In this one, I feel pretty good that Curtis Blaydes is going to get it done.
And then the co-main event is going to be a female matchup between Vieira and Yana Kunitskaya. Caitlin Vieira, a minus 265 betting favorite. On the other side is plus 225 for Kunitskaya, 9,300 on DK for Vieira, 6,900 for Kunitskaya. Over on FanDuel, $22 for the favorite, $8 for the underdog. Pete, what's your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, so this is a nice matchup. I mean, I don't know if I agree with the co-main event slot, but I will say that, Caitlin Vieira is a very, very talented fighter within the division. She's very strong, and I think the most impressive part of her game is her takedowns. I think that she mixes in her takedowns so well, and she has such variety. Like, you see lateral drops, you see haragoshis, you see uchimata throws, like you see a lot of judo-esque takedowns, and it's really nice to watch. Against Yana Kunitskaya, I think that Yana Kunitskaya in general, I think that she's been somewhat underwhelming. She came in, obviously debuted against Cyborg, which was very, very tough to do, or, getting put up against Cyborg. I think it's just a very tough task. And then since then, she's kind of just been inconsistent, 3-2 in the UFC. I think that she obviously needs to keep the fight on the feet. You have seen her mix up some takedowns as well. But I think if she goes that route against Caitlin Vieira, she's going to lose the scrambles. She's not going to be as strong as Vieira. Vieira has the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu advantage in this position. So I am favoring Caitlin Vieira quite a bit. I just don't know if I agree with that price tag. I think that she's going to get a pretty easy victory here, has a nice win over Sijara Eubanks, who I do think is better than Yana Kunitskaya. Different style, but I do think that Sijara has good boxing, good jiu-jitsu, just fatigues over the course of the fight. So I do think that win kind of aged well. 9,300, I just think that there's probably better spots to go. I'll definitely target Caitlin Vieira because I like the potential and I do like watching her fight. Yana Kunitskaya, not really a fighter that I will be targeting much. I would much rather, if I'm going to go that low, go to Derek Lewis in hopes that he gets a knockout win over Curtis Blaydes.
What's the path to victory for Caitlin to pay off that $9,300 price tag or $22 on FanDuel?
Yeah, I think that she has to work towards a finish, which we know is not really common within women's MMA. 55% finish rate for Caitlin Vieira. A decisive win, mixing in takedowns and control time probably isn't enough because it's a 3-round fight. The reason that Curtis Blaydes could pay off with that same type of strategy is because he has the 2 additional rounds. He also throws a ton of significant strikes. He throws a ton of ground and pound. If advances were there, I do think that Curtis Blaydes would be able to rack up a ton of those, but they're not there anymore. And work towards a submission victory over Yana Kunitskaya. Yana is tough. You know that she's always prepared for a fight, but I think that she's somewhat exposed once you put her on her back.
Next up, we got Charles Rosa taking on Derek Minner. Derek Minner here, 7,400 on DK, 8,800 for Rosa, and then Rosa $20 on FanDuel, $10 for Derek Minner. I had a chance to talk to Charles Rosa about 2 weeks ago, and basically, best way I can put it is he doesn't think much of Derek Minner on the feet. Understands that he knows what to expect when this fight potentially goes to the ground. In particular, mentioned the guillotine of Derek Minner. But what's your take on this fight?
Yeah, so I think that this is a very interesting matchup and probably a fight that I will be having a decent amount of exposure to. I will say that Derek Minner is probably one of the best value plays on the slate. Not saying that he's going to go out there and get a victory over Charles Rosa, but in the route of most of his wins, I mean, he has a 92% finish rate. He's mainly a round one kind of guy. So a round one kind of guy is someone you always want to circle, especially when they are priced below $8,000. So Minner at 7,400, you could do worse than him of the value plays. But I do think that, Charles Rosa is going to be so schooled on the mat. Charles Rosa's takedown defense is something that's not really up to par. If you think back on that Bryce Mitchell fight, he kind of let me down in that situation in that regard because, Charles Rosa is always surrounded by phenomenal Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belts at American Top Team. And I will say that Charles Rosa hunts so many submissions off of his back. But as we say every week, when you're such a dominant Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner, you're too comfortable being on your back. And if you do not get a finish, you're going to be behind on the rounds. Your opponent's going to have a ton of control time. They're going to be winning on the scorecard. So Rosa hunts submissions like crazy. You'll see him go for arm bars, triangles, but he mixes things up a lot by going for leg locks. And I also think that Rosa is just really tough to put away. I mean, Bryce Mitchell had him in, I don't know how many twisters, and he just refused to tap. I mean, how many sticky situations has he been able to overcome? And Minner's shot at winning is via top control or a quick submission victory. I don't see him getting a quick submission victory. And despite working with James Krause, who's a mastermind, we love him. We talk him up every week. I just don't know if you can make, a crazy round one type of guy and stretch him out over 3 rounds and say, hey, we're going to work on patience and learning to calm down, because Minner in his losses, he's quick to tap and he does get finished quite a bit when he's outside of that round one.
Yeah, that was actually when I was looking at some of the best prop bets on the card. I really like that Charles Rosa wins in round 2, plus 475. I mean, look, he's going to have to weather that early storm coming from Derek Minner. He knows he's got to weather that early storm. But if you get Derek Minner in round 2, more times than not, he does wear down, going for those submissions in the first round. And, look, Charles Rosa has fought the tougher competition, no question about it. Derek Minner is a vet of this sport, but I do like Charles Rosa in this spot, and I do think this is a fight that in terms of GPPs, you really got to, when you're talking about what fights you have to target, I think this is one of the fights that you have to target in terms of GPPs. Next up, we got our second of 4 heavyweight matchup, Alexei Oleinik and Chris Daukaus, 7,600 for Oleinik, 8,600 for Chris Daukaus over on DraftKings. The betting odds for this one, Chris Daukaus a minus 185 favorite. On the other side, Oleinik is at plus 160. I think when I think of this fight, Pete, I think of the athletic advantage I see that Chris Daukaus has against Oleinik.
I mean, talk about a step up in competition for Chris Daukaus. I mean, Chris Daukaus goes from debuting against Parker Porter in what was virtually a pick'em, and then taking out Rodrigo Nascimento in round 1 in under a minute via striking. Now taking on Alexei Oleinik, who has nearly 75 fights. So it's pretty remarkable. And I will say that Alexei Oleinik has a variety of attacks and a variety of wins, mixing up tons of submissions. You see him going for Ezekiel chokes, which is like it's a white belt move, but he's mastered it. So it's a sneaky move that he goes for and puts himself in bad positions because he's just so willing to hunt it because he's confident in it. Alexei Oleinik, we were on him when he fought Fabricio Verdum. We thought that he was in a good spot. He's able to match people on the feet, but more so being able to match the slow heavyweights. Chris Daukaus, what makes him so different in this division is his speed. So he's not a big heavyweight by any means, but he's a faster heavyweight. And with that, speed advantage, he's able to touch these guys on the chin a lot quicker, and he's able to disrupt their defensive ability by just getting there a little bit sooner than they thought. So I do think that Chris Daukaus is stepping up on it, huge right here. But I do feel like he is able to take advantage of the situation. Chris Daukaus is also he's either a brown belt or Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. So it's not like he's a scrub on the mat whatsoever. Alexei Oleinik will have the physicality in this fight, but I do think that the speed will just be too much for Oleinik. And I do like Chris Daukaus quite a bit. 8,600. Never really thought I'd say that in somebody's third professional fight in the UFC. But, Oleinik is getting up there in age, and we have seen him start to, outside of round 1, how he drops off a cliff with that cardio if the fight's not going his way. So Daukaus 8,600. I like him a little bit. It's just obviously the fear of, the step up in competition. Alexei Oleinik at 7,600. You're talking about an underdog. Both these guys have a finish rate of 90%, 92%. I mean, the guy is 8-5 in the UFC. You could do worse than Alexei Oleinik as a GPP target pump play, and that's the category I have him in.
My only fear about if you want to take a punt play on Oleinik is he does wear down. That is a little bit of the concern I have. That's why I do like the Chris Daukaus wins by TKO KO, which is -135. So you don't got to pay as much if you just want Daukaus to win the fight. I mean, if I'm looking at Oleinik, his path to victory, obviously we all know what he wants to do. He wants to get this fight to the ground and get a submission. But I would be concerned in taking Oleinik that if this fight gets into the later second, early third round, he just wears out. And we kind of see a situation we saw last week with Anthony Hernandez where Vieira just gassed himself out and then submitted. And then the world champion jiu-jitsu practitioner gets submitted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's MMA, Jason, and anything can happen. So, like, it's so crazy how somebody can be so dominant in one area and then come into the UFC and just completely get destroyed in that area. I mean, think about Gokhan Saki getting knocked out against Khalil Roundtree. Gokhan Saki is one of the best strikers in the world, and then comes into the UFC and gets knocked out by a UFC striker. So, I mean, the sport is unique in its own, and that's why you saw that crazy upset last week, in which blew my mind and was one of the craziest of all time.
Appreciate everyone who's taking time out of their day to watch the MMA DFS strategy show right here at Awesemo.com. And you got to take advantage of the offers we got going on over at Awesemo.com. Become a Awesemo Plus member. You get a weekly pass for $29.95. Get you access to all the ownership projections, player projections for all the sports that we have over at Awesemo.com. And if you're just looking for a MMA weekly pass, sign up now for a MMA weekly pass, Awesemo Plus MMA weekly pass for $8.95. Stop guessing, start winning. You got to take advantage. Look at those ownership projections. And by the way, do let you know, free content up on the website this week is MMA fighter projections. So check that out as you are building your lineups for Saturday's UFC Vegas number 17 or 19, excuse me. Of course, you see right there on the screen the various packages that we do have over there at Awesemo.com. Let's move on to our next matchup. It was a matchup we broke down about, I guess, a month ago, I want to say it was. Hawes and Imavov, 8,200, 8,000, 8,200 for Phil Hawes, 8,000 for Imavov. I guess this is, get your breakdown here, but my general thought is I like Phil Hawes in the first round, but this fight gets to the second and third round. I'm not sure how much I really like him.
Yeah, man, I'm a big Phil Hawes guy. And I was hoping that this fight was never rebooked again, because I think that this is a very tough matchup. And the reason I think it's a very tough matchup is because I think that Nasruddin Imavov is able to match him in a lot of departments. Obviously, Phil Hawes is so dangerous in round one. So if you're looking for a guy that can get you that quick Francis Ngannou 1 minute bonus, I think that Phil Hawes is that guy, because that's his path to victory and path of least resistance. Get it done early. But when he does that and he fails, he does seem to taper off. And, we see that fatigue makes a coward out of all of us. You saw that in the last weekend, Rodolfo Vieira, amazing decorated fighter, that once fatigue got a hold of him and made him, susceptible to getting finished. So I will say that, Hawes is a guy to circle. I'll definitely have my shares of Hawes, but I do think that Imavov is an interesting underdog here. Slight underdog, but 8,000 on DraftKings, he's something to consider. I like him quite a bit. I like his boxing. I like his submission ability. I just think that he's a big guy too. He's a big frame man, and I just think that he's able to compete and go tit for tat with Phil Hawes here. So I'm siding slightly with Nasruddin Imavov, even though I don't want to. And I'm excited for the fight. It's one of the fights that I'm really looking forward to now that it's actually happening. But probably a fight that you're going to need in your lineups.
Miles, with his hot take of the card, winner of Hawes, Imavov will 100% be optimal.
It's not a bad. I mean, it's when we originally broke this down, I think it was like a couple months ago, whenever it was, a month ago. We mentioned that you need this fight. It's going to be a part of the optimal lineup, and generally in that 8,000, 8,200 range, more often than not, those fights are going to be, pretty consistent with the top lineups.
Of course, you got to be sure to check out us on Saturday, live before lock. We'll be on at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to get you ready for this fight card. Of course, starts at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. And this is a Tom Aspinall fight week, so Pete is all excited about that one. We'll talk about that matchup here against Andre Arlovski. Aspinall 9,200, 7,000 for Arlovski, and then 22 and 8 over on FanDuel. And we'll look at the betting odds. Almost a 2.5 to 1 betting favorite for Tom Aspinall, minus 245. But Pete, Andre Arlovski, they keep lining up these younger guys with them, and somehow it's always a close decision.
Yeah, Arlovski just won't go away, right? I mean, like, they're trying to put that final nail in the coffin. He just won't go away. They're like, man, what do we got to do to get this guy out of here? But, they recognize that Arlovski is like the ultimate gatekeeper for the upper echelon, the upcoming fighters. You see it against Tanner Boser, Felipe Lins. Like you see a lot of this, and I think that Arlovski is a guy that just kind of keeps proving people wrong, because over the years, it seems like he started to limit his mistakes. He used to be a lot more reckless as he was younger. Whether it's getting smarter over the years or just not trying to take as much damage and trying to be very, very careful with his career. I will say that Tom Aspinall is my boy, and I'm going to take credit for this. And I'm going to take credit for Tom Aspinall. I'm going to take credit for Chimaev. I'm going to take credit for Romanov. I'm taking credit for all three of those guys, because now I feel like we got three actual top contenders that can make waves in their division. And I love Tom Aspinall. Former sparring partner for Tyson Fury, out of Cowboy MMA, excellent hands. And what he does compared to other fighters is he puts, combinations together. So, he's not going to go out there and throw one shot and be kind of, behind on the scorecards because Arlovski answers him at all times. I think that Aspinall, can match the volume, can exceed the volume. If things get, tough, he can also resort to takedowns. Now, it's hard to say that Arlovski is going to get taken down and submitted by somebody. But I will say that Tom Aspinall is just a very well-rounded martial artist. And I think that this is his breakout right here. I think that, even if it's a decision, which I think is everybody's fear, I think that it's just going to be an impressive performance against an aging veteran. I think that Tom Aspinall's the side to play. You could do worse than Arlovski at 7,000. That just keeps proving everybody wrong.
I was thinking about that. I was like, man, I don't think I'd love to do it, but Arlovski is a cash play.
Yeah, I think he's going to be a popular cash play, right? Because he's almost minimum salary. He's a guy that keeps coming through. How many times have we bet against him? And he just, he's always there. He's always showing up. He's a big guy. And also, we talk about how people get starstruck when they're fighting certain fighters. And I wonder if Felipe Lins, who used to train with him, Tanner Boser, a guy that's been around that division for a while, you start seeing a marquee name standing in front of you, and you kind of start to oh man, I'm really fighting Andre Arlovski right here. I think that Tom Aspinall's the guy that, sees no face, goes out there and puts together a great performance and gets a victory.
Moving on the fight card, we got Jared Gordon taking on Danny Chavez, plus 125 for Jared Gordon, minus 145 for Danny Chavez. Over on DK, 8,400 for Chavez, 7,800 for Gordon, and it is 17 and 14 over on FanDuel. Chavez, the $17 fighter, and $14 for Jared Gordon. Now, Jared Gordon's your boy, man, yeah. And I can just see it on your face. So obviously, you're not loving this fight for Jared.
I'm not loving having to break down a fight for my friend and my roommate when I was, living at Cowboys Ranch. I'm tight with Gordon. So I obviously think that he can perform well. I've been in the training room with him. And I think that you're starting to see that he's much more of just an aggressive fighter, that he's able to mix in takedowns. And I think that was the key in that Fishgold fight. Now, I will say that Chavez had quite a debut. Because he was able to stuff takedowns against TJ Brown. And when he stuffed him, it was he put a stamp on it that he stuffed the takedown. It was not even close, throwing a child. He was you're not in my weight class, boy. Now, I will say that Chavez, if you look at his career, in totality, Chavez, despite how awesome his striking looked with a low calf kick, aggressive hands, mixing up head kicks and stuff and takedowns, his finish rate sits at 27%. So, maybe he's starting to find that power late in his career. Or maybe it's just a small sample size and it was a really just impressive debut, because I don't want to overshadow his career as a whole. At 8,400, I think that Chavez is going to be very, very popular because of how good he looked in his debut. Now, Gordon at 7,800, we've seen what he's able to do as far as potential and racking up tons of points. If the scoring system that we have now was out for that Fishgold fight, like his score, I remember how bad it was because they didn't count so many of his strikes as significant, and they had no total strikes, obviously. So I think that Gordon is a pretty good underdog here. Probably not my favorite fight to target, though, Jason, honestly. Like, I feel like this is going to be an ugly back and forth type of contest. People think that Gordon doesn't really have a chin because he's been knocked out by some big names. I mean, Diego Ferreira, Charles Oliveira, Joaquin Silva. I don't really know if Chavez can really do the same exact things. Plus, you think about Gordon being at, Sanford MMA, surrounded by excellent talent. I think the kid's getting better. So I'm going to pass on this fight, but I do think that it's going to go the distance.
Next up, we got Drakkar Klose taking on Luis Pena. Luis Pena, the betting underdog, this one at plus 150, minus 170 for Drakkar Klose. Looking over at the salaries here, $9,000 for Drakkar on DraftKings, $18 on FanDuel, and for Luis, $7,200 on DK, and $13 over on FanDuel. Pete, this fight to me has got decision written all over it.
Yeah, but I think that you have a guy that has actually shown promise in the division versus the guy that has just shown hype. And the guy that's just shown hype is Luis Pena. And, I was kind of tooting that Luis Pena horn for a while, saying, look at his frame, especially when he's down at 45. He's 6'3", has a 75-inch reach. I'm always sitting there saying, reach, the fact that he's a southpaw. But I don't want to take away from the eye test. And the eye test shows me that Luis Pena, when the going gets tough, sometimes that he kind of breaks. And you saw him kind of leave his neck out there against Kama Worthy, who ended up working, putting together a beautiful guillotine choke. But, Drakkar Klose, very, very aggressive, looking to rebound off of a knockout loss to Beneil Dariush. Obviously, that has to weigh in your mind. Like, how healed is your brain? How are you going to be able to take a shot? Are you going to be, wobbly if you take a shot? Drakkar's striking defense is probably his biggest hole. And I will say it's because he leaves his chin straight up in the air. And when he leaves his chin straight up in the air, I'm like, man, come on, like get with a good coach that like tells you to keep your chin tucked, do tennis ball drills, put a tennis ball underneath your chin and hold it and do all your mitt work, all your sparring. If he's able to make that slight adjustment, which I think it's too late in his career to do, I would feel extremely confident. I think that 9,000 close. I think that he's, the A side of the fight. He can win this fight everywhere, in my opinion. I think he's got the power, the aggression, the takedowns. I just think that Klose is the A side of the fight. And if he was cheaper, I would probably be targeting him a lot. I will be getting my shares of Drakkar Klose. If you're buying into the hype of Luis Pena, not having any pressure, maybe at 7,200 he pulls it off. But, I mean, he's been in some pretty good spots before if you look at his, run in the UFC. And he hasn't really come through in spectacular fashion.
One thing about Drakkar Klose, this guy's been through several gyms over the past couple of years, was at the lab at one time, was at Fight Ready at one time. Now he's training at a different spot in Arizona. So I think that's also something to kind of put into your thought process when you're putting in there. And of course, Luis Pena taking this fight on short notice so well. Of course, he made the transition to American Top Team last year after being at AKA for a couple of years. So something to kind of think about in terms of that. Of course, be sure to be following Awesemo on Twitter at Awesemo_com. Help us get to 30,000 followers on Twitter. And we've got a giveaway going on, which we're giving away 30 free weekly passes to our followers. All you got to do is follow at Awesemo_com on Twitter. Help us get to 30,000 followers. Let's move on to the next matchup. That is going to be Eddie Wineland and John Castaneda. Eddie Wineland, 7,900 on DK, 8,300 for John Castaneda. Over on FanDuel, $16 for Castaneda, $15 for Eddie Wineland. Of course, look, everyone knows who Eddie Wineland is. John Castaneda, who came into the UFC last year after a run in Combates America. This is a fight that I don't know how it goes.
I just think that this is like, you're throwing a guy who was just knocked out, against Sean O'Malley. And I think it might be my favorite knockout. Like, it really is just such a beautiful knockout, feigning an uppercut and following through with a right cross. It was just so beautiful in Eddie Wineland. Going up against Sean Castaneda, who lost his debut to Nathaniel Wood, a fighter that I'm really high on. I will say that despite Wineland, just suffering a knockout loss, I think that this is a big, big step up in competition for Castaneda as far as, facing a guy that has finishing ability. Eddie Wineland's very good because he's so seasoned over the years. His run in the WEC, he has plenty of knockout wins in his career. 79% finish rate for Eddie Wineland. I do feel like, a lot of people could be overlooking Eddie Wineland here. He's 6-8 in the UFC. His salary sits at $7,900. Overall, he's 24-14. So if people are kind of doing that box score watching, or they're looking at records comparing, you see Castaneda sitting there at 17-5. Let's be real. Castaneda has not fought anybody that Eddie Wineland has fought over the years. And Eddie Wineland has some amazing victories against guys that are trying to take him down, against guys that are trying to stand up with him. I don't really look at Castaneda as a guy that's going to go out there and knock out Wineland. So how does he win? Does he submit Eddie? I don't see it. I don't see it happening. He'd have to edge him out in the scorecards, which is making this fight for Castaneda not like my favorite spot. If I'm going to target this spot, or I'm going to target this fight, I would much rather take a chance on Eddie Wineland, who has that power in his right hand and the combination ability and the cardio to push it and to break a newcomer. So I do favor Eddie Wineland here. And in 2021, I would not think that I would be saying that. But in this matchup, Jason, I think that Eddie Wineland's decided to play. 7,900 discount, obviously, and naturally, I'm targeting a lot more underdogs than usual just because there's 15 fights. So I'm naturally going to land on some more.
Yeah, I mean, and that's going to, when you're putting together those lineups, and whether you're a single entry player, a 3-entry player, or 150 entry player, I mean, you're going to be able to create a ton of different lineups just based on who potentially you want to get in there, especially that under 8,000 range. Now, in terms of fights, I do believe that you have to be looking at rostering. The matchup between Nate Landwehr and Julian Erosa, to me, is a fight that you got to be considering here. Essentially a pick'em fight here, -105 for Erosa, -115 for Nate Landwehr, and they're both 8,100 over on DK. Over on FanDuel, $16 for Nate and $15 for Julian Erosa. I mean, obviously the question with Julian Erosa is, do you trust the chin?
Yeah, I think that this is an interesting spot because we're seeing two fighters with the 8,100 price tag. I don't really recall that happening before. Maybe in like late replacement fights, they put same salary just because they couldn't figure it out. But 8,100, I expected, Nate Landwehr to be a decent favorite in this fight. And for some reason, Vegas is not liking it. And I think it's due to the reach and the height of Julian Erosa. I think that Nate Landwehr has fought some really, really good competition, especially over at M1. He's able to mix in takedowns if he needs it, but his wrestling usually is just to keep the fight on the feet, where he comes forward and crashes forward against his opponents, closes that distance, puts together good combinations where you do see Julian Erosa, kind of pop shot and throwing single shots, pulling off a nice victory over Sean Woodson, who is a tall, rangy guy, somebody that the UFC and even I think us, we were kind of hyped about. Like, we were like, man, this guy's such a big guy for the division. But, the cardio, just didn't check out in that fight. Julian Erosa started to, mix in some good takedowns, mix in some good strikes, and then got that nice choke. I do think that the submission's live for Julian Erosa, but I'm siding with Landwehr quite a bit. I just think that he catches Julian Erosa on the chin with one of these, knocks him down, maybe gets a couple knockdowns, even if it's in via decision. I've seen Julian Erosa knocked out by a lot of people and hurt. I mean, yes, he has kind of been put into some bad spots over the course of his career and come through in the underdog position before. I mean, especially against Sean Woodson. So a lot of people are going to do that MMA math. Well, he just beat Sean Woodson, who is a prospect. Why wouldn't he beat Nate Landwehr, who just went the distance against Darren Elkins? I hate to tell you, I think that Landwehr puts combinations together better than a lot of people. Has some sneaky pop in aggressiveness. So I'm siding Landwehr, and I think that it's going to be a part of my lineup like crazy. Yeah, I think you should be targeting this fight, but I'm siding with Landwehr, and 8,100, I think it's a discount.
I spoke to Erosa 2 weeks ago, and this will actually be his first fight since recovering from COVID. He mentioned about, he did have a little bit of effects in terms of getting that cardio back to where he wants it to be. So that's something to note there. Miles asks, he goes, more impressive win, Landwehr over Elkins or Rosa over Woodson?
I would say it's Landwehr over Elkins based on, Elkins being in the UFC. Yeah, he's the heavy bag that chases you around the ring. But let me tell you that, Darren Elkins' pace is tough to match, and Landwehr matched it. Defending, Elkins' takedowns is tough, and he did that. And winning on the scorecards over Elkins, I think, is impressive. But Elkins has some sneaky wins. Woodson could have been just an overhyped prospect. I do think that he's talented. I feel like he cuts a little bit too much weight. It was a great win for Julian Erosa, but I think that it's not Julian Erosa's best win.
Let's move on to the next matchup. We've got Pat Sabatini, the CFFC champion, making his UFC debut. He's plus 160, taking on Rafael Alves, who's minus 185. Alves, 8,900 DK, 7,300 for Sabatini, $19 for Alves, and $9 for Sabatini. What's your thoughts on this one? A short notice fight here for Sabatini making his UFC debut.
Yeah, I love this fight, and I think that this is a fight that I'll, be smashing exposure to. I think Alves will be decently popular at 8,900, 74% finish rate, going up against, like you said, the CFFC champ in Sabatini, and he has an 85% finish rate. Both these guys are Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belts, and I do think that they are coming from great camps. Alves comes from MMA Masters, whereas Sabatini, it's that Renzo Gracie Philly area, working a lot with Daniel Gracie and those guys. And I do favor fighters that come out of a tough promotion. And I will tell you that CFFC fighters have had a lot of success on the big stage. If you think about Sean Brady, Jared Gordon, both guys that kind of dominated their opposition in that promotion have had good success. Man, for me, it's the underdog for me. Sabatini, I like him here. I think that he minimizes mistakes. I think that Alves, despite having probably some more power and some more aggressiveness, Sabatini's like that constant work rate, pushing towards a finish, minimizing mistakes. I think you need the fight. I'll be having plenty of Alves, but I think that Sabatini, whether it's via submission or via, striking, I think that he's able to get a finish here. And Alves, if you look in his losses, he's kind of like that, kill or be killed type of mentality. He goes out there on his shield, whether he's going to try to finish you or get finished in the process. And I think going up against a technician like Sabatini, I think it could be a recipe for a disaster. I might be alone on this island, Jason, but I like Sabatini at 7,300.
I'm with you on that island, so you're not alone. Of course, this is Mma Dfs Strategy Show right here at Awesemo.com. Be sure to hit that thumbs up button right here on YouTube. Also, if you're not subscribed to Also, you got to hit that subscribe and also hit that notification bell so you know when a show is live here on the channel. Coming up right after us will be the late slate NBA Live Before Lock to get you ready for the late slate of tonight's NBA action. We'll move on to our next matchup, a female matchup. But when we talk about the lower echelon of the UFC's women's fights, this is going to be one of them. Shane Dobson versus Casey O'Neill. I can see the look on your face here. Shane Dobson plus 130. Casey O'Neill minus 150, 7,700 for Shayna on DK, 8,500 for Casey, and then it is $18 for O'Neill on FanDuel, $13 for Shayna Dobson. Pete, the best way I can put this is striker versus grappler.
This is a fight that shouldn't exist, and this is a fight that if you actually place money on, you are out of your mind. I will say that O'Neill at 8,500 and Dobson at 7,700, man. Talk about flip a coin, turn around, and just close your eyes. I don't really know what's going to happen. You did see Shayna Dobson come in and kind of overperform in her victory over Maria Agapova, and I will say that she was a significant underdog, and I think that might be one of the biggest upsets in UFC history. I mean, she was just completely written off, and I think that it goes to show you that the UFC hype machine can really distract you from facts and footage. And, I did think that even if you look at footage, that Maria Agapova was definitely the A side. But any given day, one scramble, fighter's feeling ill, you don't know. There's tons of factors that you just don't know. Then somebody could be off mentally. And you know, as a fighter, I understand how crazy and unpredictable this game is. I don't really want to pick this fight, but I have to for you guys. I will say that Shauna Dobson has terrible takedown defense. And in saying that, she's okay with her Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu where she's comfortable off of her back, which is a negative, right? Because you're either getting beaten up or losing on the scorecards. But on the feet, and she just does have some aggressiveness about her. I don't really know if anybody's ever tested O'Neal in her professional career. I just feel like it's kind of too much too soon for O'Neal. And even though that Dobson looks like a cupcake matchup, Dobson overperforms and kind of spoils the debut for O'Neal. Like, O'Neal's shot is obviously getting on top, winning rounds via control time. I mean, I don't feel, unless you know and you've trained with O'Neal or Dobson, it's hard to actually have a confident read on this. But, like, I wouldn't mind Dobson, you know, at 7,700 as an underdog play. Like, I think that she's in an okay spot to take out another overhyped prospect.
Yeah, I mean, your big concern with Shayna Dobson here is whether or not she can stop the takedown, because she has not shown the ability to stop the takedown in the UFC. Her opponents in her 4 UFC fights have attempted 8 takedowns. She's been taken down 8 times. Do I dare say hashtag takedown city?
Yeah, or armbar from guard. I mean, something can happen, right? Like O'Neal. So it's a bad thing when you're facing favorable matchups throughout your career, right? Because if you have not been tested, you don't know how to respond. Or it's kind of like, you know, when you're being fed everything, you don't know really how to respond, and you're not able to overcome that adversity. I think that is a very, very difficult fight to debut on, and it's a difficult fight to choose, but it's probably going to end up being optimal just because they're both low level.
Yeah, it's one of those fights I look at and just say, I don't know if I want to go, that route. Let's move on. We got Chaz Skelly against Jamal Emmers, 7,400 for Chaz Skelly, 8,800 for Emmers, and $20 for Emmers on FanDuel, $9 for Chaz Skelly. Chaz Skelly been around a long time. I don't know if he knows how to be a boring fighter.
Yeah, I mean, Chaz Skelly, 7,400, he's a dog. Like, he goes out there and he's always working towards a finish via grappling. His striking, I think I'd put him in my top 10 worst strikers of all time. But he makes up for that striking deficiency with excellent grappling and jiu-jitsu. Chaz Skelly, obviously you are going for the narrative that he's going to be able to either scramble on the mat or get Emmers down. Now, I do feel like Emmers has some really sneaky wrestling. Offensively, he's able to take his opponents down. I wouldn't suggest doing that against Chaz Skelly because you're kind of welcoming the beast and putting your neck out there. And Chaz Skelly has some really deceptive chokes, hits him from some odd angles, and chains together, guillotines, darts, chokes, anacondas, all of that pretty quickly. So I wouldn't want Chaz Skelly on your back or anywhere on the mat for that matter. I think that Emmers should just keep it up on the feet. He has the wrestling ability to keep it on the feet and punish Chaz Skelly, despite Skelly's okay takedown attempts. I will say that Emmers can defend, pick him apart on the feet. I like Emmers quite a bit, but 7,400 Skelly, definitely a guy that can go out there and get you a submission win and get you a finish in that underdog spot. So for me, it's Emmers. I like him quite a bit.
Now, when you're not able to watch our shows live on YouTube, you can check them out as a part of the Awesemo Podcast Network. Just go to awesemo.com/podcast to find the podcast that you are looking for. Make sure to leave us a 5-star review for your chance to win a free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. Of course, be sure when you download the MMA podcast, you got to give that 5-star review. Help myself and Pete out. That really does help the show grow and to get to more people. So as always, we appreciate everyone who checks out the show right here at awesemo.com. 2 more fights to go here. Let's go to Amin Zahabi, Draco Rodriguez, another fight that was supposed to take place back in December. Pete, sell me on Amin Zahabi of why I should roster him.
It's tough to sell you because he has been absent from the cage for quite some time, and it's another situation of Amin Zahabi being hyped up to be, another notable name within the division, not being the most active fighter. Having that Zahabi last name, so people obviously are going to hold him to a higher standard, especially because his brother's Faraz Zahabi, GSP's amazing coach. I will say that Zahabi is a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And I know that Draco Rodriguez, good hands, good jiu-jitsu off of his back. But it finds himself on his back quite a bit in some of his fights. And he's comfortable there. And despite not being as highly regarded as a BJJ practitioner, he hunts finishes and is the younger guy. Standing up, you do know that Draco Rodriguez has good hands and pull counters really well. His crosses really well. Both these guys have 86% finish rate. So I feel like this fight's going to be a banger. It's going to be a good one. It's a fight that I'll definitely be getting my exposure to both of them. 7,500 for Zahabi. He's not an underdog I'm ignoring at all. It's just in the UFC, he has underperformed. He has had some good moments. If you think about that Ricardo Ramos fight, was doing well, ultimately got knocked out. But losing that last loss is kind of what's sticking out to me. I don't really hold his opponent, in the highest regard. I do think that Draco Rodriguez is somebody that's exciting. I do think that Rodriguez goes for it, goes for the kill, makes some mistakes in the process, but at least he goes for it, and you know that he's going to give full effort. So I will slightly lean Rodriguez, but if you sat there and told me that Zahabi, pulled the upset, I wouldn't be surprised at all because he's a good instructor up there at TriStar, and also, he is surrounded by top talent. So in a spot like this, you would think that he'd like to spoil the debut.
And the opening fight of the night will be a heavyweight matchup. Sergey Spivak taking on Jared Vanderaa. These two guys are supposed to fight back in December, but Vanderaa had to pull out due to a positive COVID test, which he told me no lingering effects from it. He said it actually did affect his coach longer than it affected him. But you look at this one, 9,100 for Spivak, 7,100 for Vanderaa. What's your take on this one, Pete?
Yeah, it's about top control, right? Like I feel like, with heavyweight MMA, it comes down to, cardio, obviously, which fighters have, the edge in the power department. And if a fighter ends up on top position, we have Hunter in the chat asking about, what's the odds that, say, Vanderaa ends up on top. And I would say that if he ends up on top, on the ground, that's a great position for him to be in. I don't really foresee that happening against Sergey Spivak. I think that Sergey Spivak has really evolved, has fought some good fighters in the UFC. You see Walt Harris just taking him out quickly, but I think that's unfair. I think that, you see that win over Carlos Felipe, who, if you look at Carlos Felipe now, he's looking like a pretty decent fighter in the UFC for the division. So, Sergey Spivak, despite not being the biggest heavyweight, does have a nice Sambo background, does have a nice clinch game, does have the ability to change levels and take people down and dictate where the fight takes place. And I did see Vanderaa get controlled in the clinch on the regional scene quite a bit. And I think that if Spivak's in there with him against the cage or controlling him, I think that Spivak's winning that battle. And, I think that Spivak is a nice pick, as far as heavyweights, and especially heavyweight fights. This probably is my least favorite of them all. I feel like this is my least favorite of the heavyweight fights, but I do think and predict Spivak will get a decisive victory here.
Samuel asked if I'm targeting the first fight. I wouldn't say I'm targeting the fight. I mean, you got 15 fights. I just don't know if this is the highest of scoring of DF of fights on Saturday, but I'll probably, in a 20 max, I'll probably have 30% total in the fight.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to be tough to have a really high percentage ownership for certain fights because there's so many fights on the card, right? Like, you're going to be spread pretty thin. So I think like a strategy like this, like you could try to cover all bases here, but now you're talking about having exposure to 30 fighters, whether, or you can have concentrated exposure to certain fights that you think that you really feel good about as far as the optimal.
Let's go through our straight up fight picks. These are not DFS related. These are just our straight up fight picks. I'm main event. I'm gonna go Curtis Blaydes, and the co-main event, give me Caitlin Vieira. Then we go Rosa, Daukaus, Hawes, Aspinall, Gordon, Klose. Give me John Castaneda. I don't know how good I feel about that one. Nate Landwehr. Give me Pat Sabatini as an upset pick, and give me another upset pick in Shayna Dobson. And then give me the last three favors: Emmers, Rodriguez, and Spivak.
Yeah, so I'm going to go Blaydes, Caitlin Vieira, Charles Rosa, Chris Daukaus, Nasruddin Imavov, Tom Aspinall, Sabatini, slightly into Gordon, rooting for my buddy, Drakkar Klose, Eddie Wineland, Nate Landwehr, Shayna Dobson, Jamal Emmers, Draco Rodriguez, Sergey Spivak.
Did you give you one on Alves and Sabatini?
Yep, Sabatini. Yep.
Okay. Let's do a couple of quick true-false ones before we get out of here. True-false. The optimal lineup will have 3 heavyweights.
It's a great question, Jason. I think it'll have, at least one is a cheap answer. I'll say 2 max.
That's why I said 3.
Yeah.
I knew if I put 2, it was an easy answer. I got to put 3 to make it a little bit.
Yeah, no, I don't think it's 3.
Number 2, there will be a fight that ends in under 60 seconds.
15 fights. I'll say true.
Wow. There's only been 2 this year so far. And they both happen on the same card. Corey Sandhagen and Ode Osborne.
15 fights. I'm sure somebody's going to be. Yeah, I'll say true.
And then the final one, this card, 15 fights, will see at least 7 fights go the distance.
Ooh, 7 seems like a big number, bro. But I know it's 15. I will say at least 7. I will say true.
I think it's true. I really do. I think you're going to be right around that 7 number. I really do. I think there's some fights.
We gotta come back to these. It'd be fun.
Yeah, we'll have to see after the fact. We'll get a super chat in here for Sam before we get out of here for the late slate NBA Live before lock. Sam, we'll appreciate you in the super chat. He says, usual questions, top 2 cash, top 2 GPP, top 2 underdogs. Who's your top choice for inside the distance? Top 2 MVP on FanDuel, top 2 champions on Super Draft. Let's just start top 2 cash.
It would be Blaydes and Landwehr for me.
Oh, not Aspinall? Not going with your
No, I think Aspinall is going to do great, but as far as score-wise, I don't know.
Top 2 GPP.
I think Aspinall has potential. He could have that quick finish. So I'll say Aspinall and Daukaus.
Top 2 underdogs.
I will say Sabatini and Wineland.
Top choice inside the distance.
Ooh. That's a hard one. There's 15 fights. I will say, give me Landwehr.
Nice. Top 2 MVPs on FanDuel.
Who's going to stuff takedowns? Well, who's going to stuff takedowns? I think Imavov would have to stuff a lot of takedowns. So I think that is interesting. Mm-hmm. And then another champion over there. I like Landwehr at 16 too. I think that's pretty good. But Blaydes at 23, that's nice.
Just looking at the over on Super Draft, the ones that one that I really saw, I'm going down my list here that I thought was kind of juicy. Eddie Wineland at 1.35 times, I think is a nice one. Sabatini at 1.45. This is for the flex position. This is a champion. Shayna Dobson 1.4, I think is interesting. Draco Rodriguez, 1.15, I think is another one that is interesting there. Samuel, appreciate you there in the super chat. Of course, myself and Pete will be back on Saturday, live 4 o'clock, 4 p.m. Eastern time. That is going to do it for the Mma Dfs Strategy Show. Coming up next right here on Awesemo.com will be the NBA live 4 o'clock for the late slate. So good luck to everyone coming up here tonight if you're playing a little DFS, and we will talk to you again on Saturday for live before lock.